Welcome to the Retirement Made Easy podcast, a show created to be your go-to source for straightforward retirement advice. Best of all, it is presented in a language that you can understand. Are you ready for some straight talk on retirement planning without all the fluff? Well, you found the right podcast. Here's your host, certified financial planner, Greg Gonzalez.
Welcome to the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Greg Gonzalez. My goal for the podcast is to help you live a better life in retirement by giving you the tools and information you need in a language that you can understand. On today's episode, we're going to be highlighting some of the best questions that we heard from listeners so far. If you're a new listener, I want to encourage you to check out our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. I've had a lot of meetings, review meetings, and meetings with phone, Zoom, and in-person meetings, not only with podcast listeners, but also we have a Retirement Made Easy TV show. And people find us either referred to us that are kind of looking for help with retirement planning. And our sole focus at my company, St. Louis Retirement Advisors, is we only work with people 50 and over as they're wanting to plan for a successful retirement. So we hear a lot of different stories, a lot of different goals. People come from all backgrounds, have different resources. Some have pensions, some don't, all kinds of different professions. So it's a lot of fun developing these retirement plans for people based on, like I said, the retirement they envision, not some cookie cutter approach. But some of the questions that came in that I thought our listeners would really, really benefit from hearing. One of the questions was as far as inheritance and an expected inheritance that might impact the direction of your retirement. And I had a couple people this week actually say, can we build in an inheritance of X amount of dollars coming in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years? And my answer to that is, I don't like doing that. Ultimately, the plans we create, of course, are customized. And if someone is adamant about having an inheritance in the terms that they determine, we will include it in the plan. However, if I had my choice, I would elect to not include it in the plan. And this is why. I could tell you story after story after story after story of situations where someone was anticipating an inheritance or no inheritance at all, and they were surprised with what they ended up getting. What can happen? Well, quite simply, the last couple of years that mom or dad or your aunt and uncle or whoever it is that you would be inheriting money from, they can change their estate planning and they can reduce the amount somebody gets, not include them at all, take them out. All kinds of things can happen. And the recipient, the person that would inherit the money, they're unaware of those changes. That's happened more times than I really can count. So that's one thing. Another thing, end-of-life care, long-term care. Well, that can eat away at a lot of that, I call it estate value, if you will, because the costs of long-term care are so high. And if someone, let's say it's $8,000 a month, in a year's time, that's $96,000. Also, the estate and the portfolio of assets, how are they settled? How are they invested? If the market dives like it did last year in 2022, gosh, the value of the estate could be 20% lower or more in a single year. And the other thing is putting a timeline on it. It's kind of cold and sensitive because unless somebody's death is imminent, how long do we know somebody's going to live? It really is impossible to predict with any grain of accuracy. And the other thing is sometimes there's a probate process, and that can last a long, long time. If things are not registered correctly and set up correctly, a lot of the estate may end up in probate, and that may delay any inheritance that you receive. Or even the estate, there might be somebody challenging that and saying, oh, in the probate process, they come out of the woodwork and they say, oh, I feel I am entitled to X percent of the estate. And then you have all that to deal with. So a lot of things can happen. So until somebody actually receives the inheritance, typically we're not including it in somebody's retirement plan. But again, our clients do call the shots, and I am not going to steer someone away. I can just caution at what I have experienced and witnessed in my own eyes doing this for quite some time is that things don't always go as planned when it comes to inheriting money. And in my opinion, we don't want, if we can avoid it, the overall success of your retirement to be determined by a future inheritance. To me, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. That's a risk that I can live without, so to speak. And I hope you would agree that that makes sense. And then the last question comes from a meeting that I actually had 2 weeks ago. And their question was about assumptions. When you're looking ahead at retirement and saying, okay, we're going to be retired 30 years now. What's the best way to do that? Well, like the cost of living, how much are your costs going to go up over the next 30 years? And if you've learned anything from this podcast, you know I am a big believer in the rising cost of living. And what I mean by that is costs go up over time. It's almost impossible to keep your expenses fixed because the cost of insurance, whether it's auto insurance or health insurance or homeowners insurance, whatever it is, those tend to go up over time. Your grocery bill tends to go up over time. Utility bill. In our neighborhood, I think the trash collection went up, and it's billed quarterly, but it just went up like 15%. And a lot of the retired folks in my neighborhood are very dissatisfied. They're very unhappy with that they could raise rates like that. Property taxes tend to go up. All these different things tend to cost more in retirement. It's more expensive to live. And if you're one of those people with a pension that is fixed for the rest of your life, well, the first year of retirement is going to be the best it ever looks. The dollar amount will be maintained for the rest of your life, assuming the pension fund doesn't default. But what a dollar will buy in the first year of retirement will be the most that it ever buys, just because of the cost of living going up and up and up over the years. So with that being said, what do we plan for? And you've got to kind of go with a historic average. In my opinion, if you're looking at a 30-year retirement, you would take a 30-year average. Now, I don't think what you can do is to say, okay, the highest it's been in the last 30 years was last year, it was 8%. So we'll do an 8% inflation. I mean, to me, that's just kind of overshooting it. So what we do is, again, go with an average. If you want to go slightly above that, because we can look at the last 30 years, but we don't know what the next 30 years are going to be. But again, this is planning. This is using assumptions. And if history is any guide, and I'll argue it's the only guide we have, I would expect the next 30 years, the cost of living to be somewhat close to the last 30 years. And of course, Social Security, they report how they have increased the cost of living adjustment for Social Security benefits over the years. I mean, it's all at ssa.gov for you to enjoy and read about, but we are a little less optimistic about Social Security in the future. So we tend to make the COLA, the cost of living adjustment for somebody's retirement plan, a little on the conservative side, less than we hope it will be, less than the 30-year average. Again, trying to make the plan more conservative. This listener had mentioned that their father had some life insurance policies and was currently in assisted living and did not have the money to keep paying the premiums for this life insurance. They said, our financial guy, I'm assuming that's a financial planner, says to cash in the life insurance policies, and that way we would not have to pay the premiums any longer. What do you think? The death benefits are over $300,000 on dad's life insurance. So for this listener, I actually emailed this person and they're on my calendar. We're going to do a phone meeting to kind of dive into more details. But one thing I would look at, and I thought it was important. I pulled this question because I thought it was important for people to understand the nuances of life insurance policies and how they work. With some life insurance policies, a lot of them, there's what's called a disability waiver of premium. Well, what the heck does that mean? Disability waiver of premium. It means if you're in assisted living or you become disabled, you will no longer have to pay premiums into this life insurance policy, and the death benefit stays intact. It doesn't go away. And a lot of these policies will have this disability waiver of premium on them. So what I'm going to tell this person in our phone meeting here in a couple of weeks is, hey, check out that life insurance policy to see if it has that. And if it does, then your dad's premiums would essentially stop and the death benefit would stay intact. So it's definitely worth checking into. And I think sometimes we just make these quick decisions without knowing all your options and talking through the different options that are out there. It doesn't have to be option A, we keep paying the premiums for the life insurance. Option B, we cancel the policies. There's an option, a lot of times an option C, D, E, and F. It's just we have to kind of discover those and see what makes most sense. All right, next question comes from a listener that said she was married 15 years. She started her Social Security at 65. Her ex-husband is 75 and is in very, very poor health right now. The doctors told him he should not expect to live more than 2 years. She says she still has a good relationship with her ex-husband because they have children together. But after listening to the Social Security episodes that we had released, she wanted to make sure she understood how this would impact her. Okay, so a couple points here. She was married to her ex-husband more than 10 years. She said, in fact, 15 years. So that tells us she was eligible for not only spousal, but also survivor benefits, as long as she didn't get remarried, and it doesn't sound like she did, before her 60th birthday, and is currently married to that person. So let's just assume she never got remarried after getting to divorce to this gentleman. Well, the way that would work, then she would be eligible for the survivor benefit. Let's assume that he waited until 70 to claim his benefit, so he maximized his own benefit. She claimed her benefit at age 65. Let's assume she's getting a check from Social Security for $1,800. Let's imagine that what he's getting right now at 75 is $3,300 a month, which is a lot more than she's getting. If he were to pass away, his $3,300 a month as a survivor benefit would go to her, and then her $1,800 a month would drop off. So that survivor benefit still applies to ex-spouses as long as you were married for 10 years or more and not remarried before age 60. And it does get a little funky there because you could have been married for 15 years. She could have gotten divorced, then married somebody for 2 years, got divorced to them, and is currently single. She would still be eligible for the survivor benefit to the ex-spouse she was married to for 15 years. And if you were married to 2 ex-spouses, more than 10 years each, you can actually get spousal or survivor benefits on the higher of the 2 Social Security benefits of those ex-spouses. So moral of the story is if you have an ex-spouse that you were married to for 10 years or more, if they pass away all of a sudden and their Social Security check is greater than yours, you might be getting a bump in your check, and that's called the survivor benefit. Next question comes from Beth, and Beth was talking about her financial advisor and also her tax advisor, what I'm going to call a tax advisor. And her concern was, without reading word for word, her concern was that her tax advisor, her CPA, just did tax prep and did not do what she's calling tax planning. And she was very, very frustrated with that because he seemed to be very, very busy come tax time. And he sent like a list, like a checklist of things that every year that she can check the boxes and throw her 1099s and W-2s and all this kind of stuff in an envelope and then deliver that to his office, and he would prepare the tax return. But she said she was looking for so much more and she wanted to know if this even existed. And then she also said that she had a stockbroker from Stifel Nicholas, it's a big firm here in St. Louis. Many of the listeners may not be familiar with it, but he was very into stock trading. And every time Beth goes to visit with him, he recommends buying and selling certain individual stocks and bonds. And she asked him kind of point blank about her retirement plan, and he kind of changed the subject and went back to the investments. So my thinking, Beth, is that your stockbroker, that's his specialty. His specialty is focusing on the investments. Just like your tax advisor, or it's really a tax preparer, they are trying to prepare as many tax returns as they can and get you in and out kind of thing. And they work on a volume business, kind of like H&R Block or some of those companies. So to answer Beth's question, it's just you're working with the wrong providers. A stockbroker is not going to have a specialty in retirement planning. His specialty is in analyzing stocks and bonds. And then your tax preparer is just doing that, preparing taxes, which is really taking the information from your 1099s and W-2s that you're providing and typing them into the software, the tax planning or the tax prep software. And then it prints out an outcome, and then you sign and you submit your taxes. That's what they do. So it sounds more like you're looking for a tax planner and a retirement planner, somebody who specializes in retirement planning. So that's who you need to seek out. And I hear this from people all the time. They may have an old financial advisor or stockbroker, and they may say, oh, we're working with Hal. And Hal is a great guy. He even goes to the same church as we do. And we just hate to leave him, but he just doesn't provide the tax planning and retirement planning that we're looking for at this crucial moment in our lives. So when you're hiring an advisor, whether it's a tax advisor, financial advisor, whoever it is, I've said this on multiple podcasts, find someone that specializes in what you're looking for help with. Maybe it's an attorney. Maybe you're looking for estate planning help. If that's the case, I would recommend seeking out an attorney who specializes in estate planning and makes that the sole focus of their business, because there are attorneys out there that just focus on estate planning. There's other attorneys that just focus on personal injury. And if you're looking for a personal injury attorney, well, you're not going to call your estate planning attorney, and vice versa. A personal injury attorney legally could draft a will and a trust and all that stuff, but I wouldn't have a lot of confidence in that person just because that's not their specialty. It's the same with a doctor. My doctor, my general practitioner, he always refers me out to these specialists if I ever need them, whether it's a dermatologist or something like that, or if I'm getting x-rays or an MRI, well, I went to a radiologist. So good question, Beth. I know I elaborated on your question way too much, but hopefully you can find some specialists that can help you. That's all I got for this episode of the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'll see you next time. And remember, always dream big. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, please consult your attorney, tax advisor, or financial advisor prior to investing. This is a hypothetical example and is not representative of any specific investment. Your results may vary. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices mentioned are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. The SmartVestor program is a directory of investment professionals. Neither Dave Ramsey nor SmartVestor are affiliates of St. Louis Retirement Advisors or LPL Financial. There is no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC. And here's another minute of disclosures from our compliance department. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of the conversion, withdrawal limitations from the Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a required minimum distribution in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. As I have said on countless episodes, this information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax advice. We suggest that you discuss your specific tax issues with a qualified tax advisor.
Thank you for listening to the show today. Check us out at our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. And if you want some help from Greg, submit your questions at the bottom of the page or sign up for a 30-minute retirement coaching session with Greg. We'll see you next week.